I'm Lexi. I'm in the US. Not too long ago, we looked at a comparison between American biscuits and British scones because I hate that people say they're the same, and I was determined to prove that they weren't. Well, I did find some differences between the biscuits and the scones, but the thing I really discovered in that video was that American scones and British scones are oceans apart. So today I'm going to make some American scones so that I can show you the differences. If you didn't watch that biscuit and scone video, I'm going to link that below so you can take a look at it. But I'm going to go ahead and highlight some of the differences between the American scones and the British scones while we go. To start with, American scones are almost always flavored. Orange is real popular. There's a chain restaurant here that does an orange scone. I'll try and put a picture of that up here. I've seen raspberry lemonade. I've seen s'mores. I've seen chocolate chip. Pretty much, if it's sweet and you think it's going to be tasty, you can put it in a scone. It's like an extension of a muffin almost. The sky's the limit. Another difference of American and British scones is the density. American scones are usually really dense and almost crumbly, where the British scones were light and flaky, a lot more like American biscuits. The reason for this is that American scones have more butter than the British scones. They also tend to have more sugar because, well, let's face it, a lot of American things tend to have more sugar. But sugar's good, right? So there's a few more differences, but I will try and highlight those as we go along as we're making the scones. So let's head into the kitchen. So we're going to start with 3 cups flour, which is 360 grams. And to that, we're going to add 3/4 cup, which is 170 grams of cold cut up butter. That is the first difference between the American and the British scones. The British scones called for softened butter and self-rising flour. But just like the British scones, and the American biscuits for that matter, we are going to rub this butter into this flour. And that is going to take me a second, so I'll be right back. Never mind, I forgot something. Before you rub this into the butter, you want to add the sugar, and this is 1/2 cup of sugar, which is 99 grams. A pinch of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder. Then you rub all this into the butter. This time I'm telling the truth. I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so I've got this rubbed in pretty good. There's still some chunks of butter, but that's okay. It's a little sandy, and when you squeeze it together, it tries to hold its shape a little bit. That's kind of what you want. So the next thing that we're going to do is add the flavor components. You can get pretty creative here with American scones. And I believe I've mentioned before, I like cinnamon. So we're going to start with some cinnamon. I know British scones are usually pretty plain, or just have some raisins or sultanas in them. But American scones are typically flavored. I don't actually think I've ever seen an American scone that wasn't flavored. I know I didn't measure that, but that looks about right to me. And like I said, you can get real creative with the flavor options here, so let your heart be your guide. The other thing we're going to add is I've got this bag of frozen apples that has been eating up space in my freezer. And we're going to add some of these. We're going to break them up though. And it should be just fine to add them in here frozen. I put frozen blueberries and blueberry muffins all the time. Although I should have broken these up a little bit better before we started this, shouldn't I? You know what? I think I want to add one more thing to these after I get the apples in. I want to add some nutmeg. And nutmeg is really good at bringing out the flavors of other things, like cinnamon and apples. So I think it will be a good addition here. Looks like the ones at the bottom of the bag are a little more broken up. That looks pretty good. Gonna grab that nutmeg. Nutmeg. Just about that much. What do you know? Maybe a little more. Give this a quick stir. I know I have a spoon sitting there, but I'm already messy from the butter, so let's just have one less thing to wash, shall we? Then we're going to add 1 egg and 1 cup, which is 236 milliliters of milk. This is whole milk, but you can use 2% or semi-skim. I probably wouldn't use full skim milk, but that's just me. Gonna give these a... Probably shouldn't have gotten both hands in there, huh? The cold apples are gonna help keep the butter cold, which is gonna help with a fluffier, flakier scone because it's gonna keep the butter from melting while I work the dough. In the kitchen, your hands are your most underutilized and most helpful tool. See, I didn't need a spoon. Still got some dry flour in the bottom here, so I'm just trying to get that worked in. You don't want to overwork the scones because that causes gluten formation, which causes a tough scone. And you still want these tender, even though the American scones are a lot more dense. Okay, clean myself off a little bit. Give me a second. I'm going to wash my hands properly. Now, another difference with American and British scones, just wash my hands, I don't want to get them all covered again, is that American scones aren't circular and cut out with a ring cutter. Usually when I do them, I just do drop scones, which is like blobs of dough, and I'll do one that way to show you. But the majority of scones you see in America are triangular, and I'm going to show you how to do that too. There, got all that out of there. Now, when I do drop scones, I just take yay much, go plop. And that's all I do. But for the traditional American scones, you're going to kind of pat this into a flat disc. Think pizza crust, but thicker. And then I'm going to use one of these, the bench scraper, because I don't want to use a knife on my silicone mat. And just cut down. This is a little sticky. Just cut down through. And even if they grow together in the oven, with the lines punched in, they should break apart pretty easily once they come out. I'll just put that there. So these are going to go in the oven for about 12 to 15 minutes. With the frozen apples, they might take a little bit longer, at 375 degrees, which is 190 Celsius. I will get these baking, and I'll see you back at the regular location in a few minutes. Bye. Okay, we're back. And I have a bone to pick with you guys. Why did no one tell me I had flour on my glasses? I depend on you for stuff like that. Come on. Slack in here. But I've got my scones out of the oven, and there was another difference from American and British scones that I didn't bring up, and that's that most American scones tend to have like an icing or a glaze on them. So I whipped this up real quick. It was real simple. I just took like half a cup of powdered sugar, some cinnamon, a couple of teaspoons of milk, stirred that together, and then put it over the scones while they were still warm. And something else I discovered, I figured out why I always make drop scones. This drop scone literally took half the time to bake as the triangular ones. And this is a pretty chunky, pretty big scone. But Americans like to do things big. I want to tell you, if you're going to make them in the circular, triangular form, to maybe make 2 discs, cut them smaller. But realistically, when I've gotten a scone at a coffee shop, it's that size. But we're going to start with this one, because it's just a little easier to handle. Like I said, they've got the glaze on them, and it dries to a nice, shiny deliciousness. Tastes a little bit like apple pie. I like that. But I don't know if you can see. I'll try and get closer in with the camera. But these aren't real flaky. They're pretty dense. And they're still kind of warm. But I'll wager that when they get cool, they're going to be pretty crumbly. And unlike the British scones, they don't really split. Because they're so highly flavored and usually frosted, you don't typically put butter and or jam on these. You just eat them as is. And I think they're pretty good. One thing I forgot to mention when we were in there cooking is another difference between the American and the British ones. At least, not so much with the recipe that I used, but Americans tend to get a little creative with the dairy that they add into the scones. This recipe used milk, just like the recipe that we did for the British scones in the other video. But I have seen scone recipes, American scone recipes, that use sour cream, that use cream cheese, that use goat cheese, that use yogurt, and I've seen some that use buttermilk too, but to me, that kind of encroaches into biscuit territory. So, what do you think? Have you tried both? Which one do you prefer? I think they both have their place. The British ones are definitely light and fluffy and, as they would say over there, Moorish. But these can be a flavor-packed treat as well. Let me know about your experiences down below. Let's have a conversation. And if you liked the video, if you could give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, I'd really appreciate it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!